fight's not with you, Holiday.
I beg to differ, sir. We started a game we never got to finish. Play for blood, remember?
I was just fooling about.
I wasn't.
Hi everyone and welcome to Priority Holder, and today we'll be playing Budget, Mono Black, Turbo Self-Mill in the Explorer format. Now, the all-star of this deck, the whole plan, is Lotleth Giant. 7 mana 6/5, that when it enters the battlefield, it deals 1 to an opponent for each creature card in our graveyard. And 7 mana is a lot, so we're not hoping to cast it, we're hoping to cheat it into play with our reanimation spell, Blood for Bones. So 4 mana, we do have to sacrifice a creature, but we get to reanimate a creature and then put one from our graveyard into our hand. So you have to be careful when calculating how much damage your Lotleth Giant is doing, because you have to remember it itself and another card is leaving, but another card's going in because you sacrificed something. So just make sure you don't get blindsided and deal less damage than you think. But the rest of the deck is a bunch of self-milling creatures to fill the graveyard outside of the only rare that we're playing, which is Cemetery Tampering. So it's a 3 mana enchantment that's Hideaway 5. So when it enters the battlefield, we look at the top 5 of our deck and we tuck one away underneath it. And if we meet the condition, we get to cast it for free. And the condition in this case is if we have 20 cards in our graveyard, which this deck does quite proficiently. Otherwise, this card is just an efficient mill engine that can mill us 3 cards every single upkeep. But yeah, that's what the whole deck is doing. There's no interaction, it's just mill for the kill. Anyway, let's jump into some games. Alright, so a reasonable hand. Only one early play, but we'll have to see how it goes. Yorion Companion on the other side. Do turn 1 Stitcher Supplier and right away milling some creatures, so that's pretty good. Alright, Spirited Companion. A nice value play from the opponent. And we draw Gnawing Vermin. So go ahead and slam the Gnawing Vermin, and I think I make a mistake here. Any chip damage we can get in really helps our lethal Lotleth Giant, so I should have attacked here, especially because we don't care if Stitcher Supplier dies anyway. Opponent decides just to take care of Stitcher Supplier, hit it with the Elspeth's Nightmare. And at first I'm not appropriately concerned with Elspeth's Nightmare. I realize right here that Chapter 3 is going to exile my graveyard, which is really bad because you can see we already have 7 creatures in the yard, now 8 for Lotleth Giant. And in 2 chapters that's going to nuke our graveyard and undo all of our progress. So we're still going to slam Cemetery Tampering and tuck a Lotleth Giant underneath. We're going to have to rebuild our graveyard though, so we're already anticipating that. And then the duress mode of Elspeth's Nightmare takes our other Cemetery Tampering, and the Brain Maggot takes our early play. So we decline the self-mill here because we know on their draw step our graveyard's getting nuked. So we're going to hold open mana for the Faerie Dreamthief activation here. So we're going to get our card. And there was an argument in doing it our turn because we have a lot of 1 mana plays. So, alright, the Restoration of my Ganjo. So opponents had a lot of sort of enter the battlefield effects and sagas thus far. We get smacked by Brain Maggot. Now we could start milling ourselves again, so now we're up to 1 creature in the yard. We gotta sort of start over from the beginning. So we're gonna slam Mire Triton and refill our graveyard. Unfortunately, we're milling a lot of our... Well, we want a Lotleth in the graveyard, but we don't like Blood for Bones getting put in there necessarily. Let's see what the opponent does. Alright, so they pitch a Doom Foretold to bring back Spirited Companion. So now it makes sense that their Doom Foretold deck, they have a lot of enter the battlefield, like permanents that get value right away that they don't mind sacrificing as they grind people out with Doom Foretold. So we're definitely self-milling again. We're going to go ahead and, this decreases our creature count. We just need more action right here. So we're activating Faerie Dreamthief, and we're going to go ahead and play Blackbloom Rogue. There is an argument to holding it as a land play so we can hardcast our Lotleth Giant in hand, so I'm not certain what is the correct play there, but just getting on board seems useful with all the stuff they're amassing. Cruelty of Gix, not great. They knock our Lotleth Giant out of our hand anyway. And we're definitely going to just keep milling with Cemetery Tampering. Checking our graveyard count, because we don't get the free cast until we get 20 cards in the yard. Now, Cruelty of Gix is pretty concerning because every single chapter on it's pretty strong. Alright, so fire off Stitcher Supplier. So we should be able, I mean, as long as our graveyard isn't messed with, isn't tampered with, our Cemetery Tampering is going to go off next turn. Alright, so opponent just tutored for something, and they slam Elspeth's Nightmare, knocking down another one of our creatures. So they're wanting to just hunt our graveyard. I'm guessing they did tutor for Elspeth's Nightmare just to, like, police our graveyard again. But we're able to free cast Lotleth Giant here and ding them for 9, and we happen to draw a Blood for Bones. And so this is me just being, like, extra cautious, like, checking our graveyard, because it's going to be -1 creature in our graveyard, but we're sack a creature. So anyway, we want to attack here because either they take the damage and it's easier to kill them, or they block and we refill our graveyard even more. And so we managed to unlock an extra creature in Mire Triton, so we have the win right here. So we don't necessarily need to play Mire Triton. I'm just being extra diligent to make sure I'm not missing something. But we're just going to stuff a few more creatures in the graveyard, then fire off Blood for Bones to reanimate a Lotleth Giant. Thankfully we had a spare one, but nice thing about Blood for Bones is if we didn't have one in the graveyard but we had one in play, well, it lets us reanimate it, and there's win number 1. Now, as we move on to the next game, please remember to Glacial Grasp the like button, comment and subscribe. It supports the channel and helps you know what the people want. Thank you. Another reasonable hand, this time we got like the 1, 2, 3 plays of Stitcher Supplier, Undead Butler, Cemetery Tampering. So, feeling pretty okay about that. Alright, turn 1, Hall of the Storm Giants. Not quite sure, I mean, a lot of decks play that, so we'll have to find out. Now, we don't have a land yet. There is an argument to playing Faerie Dreamthief here to attempt to hit land drop 3 because we have a lot of 3-drops. I go for the more mana efficient play, but I'm not 100% certain that's the correct play here. So we'll have to see if we start missing lands, and unfortunately we do. Now, we're going to go ahead and smash in. Now, I make a sequencing error here. In my mind, I really wanted Dreamthief to resolve, and so I was playing around like Censor or Jwari Disruption. But you want to play your selection ones, like you want to play your Faerie Dreamthiefs after you play all your automatic self-mill ones like Gnawing Vermin. So I think that was a sequencing error on my part right there. Luckily, it didn't end up mattering here, but it could have mattered in another instance. And it really seems like we're playing blue-black control. I was thinking we might have been playing rogues at one point, but just from the cards they're playing, leaving mana up, we know it's blue-black control. So they're going to cycle Shark Typhoon. Yeah, and they're going to get rid of our Gnawing Vermin value while they can. Stitcher Supplier. So we still haven't hit land number 3, but our graveyard is well stocked, and just our little 1/1 expendable creatures are bringing the pain to the opponent. They're already at 14, and we're about to attack them again. So they're just taking all this damage. So just our expendable army is already dealt 10 points of damage, and they let the Cemetery Tampering resolve. We don't have great options. I feel like a 2/2 is not quite good enough. I'm just viewing the graveyard here and decide just to tuck another Cemetery Tampering so that when we recast off this one, we can just re-roll essentially. So we're definitely going to self-mill here. Don't quite have 20 cards left yet. We draw a land. So I think we have a lot left in the graveyard, but that's going to allow us to attempt to kill here. And with, you know, against a control deck, 4 mana open, 7 cards in hand, this is probably not going to work, but I decide just to go for it anyway because we have a lot of onboard pressure, and so we need to make them start using up their answers of some kind. So decide it's fine to fire off Blood for Bones right here. And we're going to sack a Stitcher Supplier. There is an argument for sacking Undead Butler to try and get a threat back in hand, but opponent just negates our Blood for Bones. So our graveyard gets more juicy and they live it another turn. Alright, and then they slam Meat Hook Massacre, cutting down all of our creatures. And I'm going to go ahead and exile Undead Butler. It does, you know, lower our creature count in the graveyard, but we have so many here, like, it honestly doesn't matter. And in many situations, I'd pull a Lotleth out to hard cast it, but we're so far away from that I just go ahead and grab a Mire Triton just to get some more useful plays. Now we will be able to free cast off Cemetery Tampering, and we do resolve the second one, and we're finally able to get one of our hard hitters under that. We got Blood for Bones under the second one. Now thankfully we drew another 2-mana play, so we're just going to play both of those, but this has just been the kind of game where we don't draw lands, we just mill all of our lands, which is okay. We have enough to operate, but it looks like we're not hard casting any Lotleth Giants this game. Extinction Event's really rough because it's a clean answer without stocking our graveyard, and we don't even get the death trigger. Not only that, but they still have 3 mana open. Now, I'm checking, so we only have 16 cards left in our deck. So I'm going to have to decide about these. So I'm declining the first one and declining the second one. We don't want to cast Blood for Bones now without a creature to sacrifice to it, and we draw a second one. So we're hoping to be able to overtax their resources with all these Blood for Bones, but they need a creature in play in order to be used. So that's why we declined the Cemetery Tamperings this turn. So we're hoping that this Vulture stays around to start being sacrificed for our reanimation. Now opponent's down to 4 cards in hand. They do have a ton of mana to work with though. Now I'm checking which Cemetery Tampering is which because we don't have that many cards left in our deck. So I'm not milling with the one that's empty, and I'm going to mill the one that has the spell underneath. And I'm just confirming I know which one is which. So it's just one play pattern to be careful of in this deck. So here comes Blood for Bones. This happens on our upkeep, so we don't get to attack with our Vulture. Opponent has yet another negate. So that one doesn't work, but we have a spare Blood for Bones in hand. And we don't draw a creature to play off with it, so we're just going to fire off a Faerie Dreamthief. We have plenty of creatures, like any Lotleth's going to kill them, so we can afford to exile a few Dreamthiefs from our graveyard. Now that's really bad, is that opponent got to fire off Memory Deluge. So we know their hand is probably incredibly well stocked. Now our graveyard is also well stocked, so we're not going to be milling with Cemetery Trespassing anymore. We only have 5 cards left in the deck, so this is a tricky part, because if we just play Vulture here, we have 1 card left in our deck. So I'm trying to think about what to do here, and decide I want to draw a Faerie Dreamthief, just see what we can get. We draw a land, and if we run out Vulture, we lose on our draw step. So we actually can't play Vulture this turn. So Dreamthief is a little risky, but I'm going for the upside of, because we know we can Vulture Blood for Bones next turn at the very least, and have an empty library. This allows us to get 1 extra card out of the transaction. So we fire off another Dreamthief. Okay, so now we get an extra creature. It's ultimately not going to matter because we're going to empty our deck basically no matter what we play. Alright, so we draw a Blackbloom Rogue, and there's nothing else we can do. We've used up some of their answers. They've burned through some negates. We got to see if we could slip one past their defenses. So now the deck's empty. We're firing off Blood for Bones and hoping for the best. Mihuk's going to gain them a life, but we have so many creatures in the yard. Now, this is a good sign, unless they're just trolling us, but the timer's running down. This is an incredible sign. Firing off a Memory Deluge, digging 7 cards deep, but, they'd have to find a negate or something, but it looks like they don't have it. So I choose Lotleth Giant, choose our secondary creature. And here I'm worried about a stifle effect. All right, maybe they still have something, but no, we surprisingly get them in a moment of vulnerability against the control deck. So we keep this hand, and feeling really good about that last win. waiting on an empty library is an amazing feeling. Gnawing Vermin milling ourselves. Let's see what they do. Consider from the opponent. Let's see what their follow-up is. Thing in the ice. So this pretty much screams that it's an Arclight Phoenix deck. We have a clean curve out right here. Gonna go ahead and use Undead Butler. Was used to the Gnawing Vermin targeting myself thing, so that's why I was about to click on myself for Undead Butler. Picklock Prankster is an awesome upgrade for the Phoenix deck because it's self-mill that gives you some card advantage while giving you an extra creature to play. So it's just an awesome creature for that archetype. Just really nice for their plan. Now I'm attacking here. An opponent really wants to preserve Thing in the Ice, but we know they're gonna flip Thing in the Ice on their turn. But tucking a Lotleth Giant under our Cemetery Trespassing is amazing. So we know that the end step Otherworldly Gaze is coming, and presumably you're gonna be able to cast 2 spells in their turn. So that's why I tacked in, because when Thing in the Ice flips, it's gonna bounce all non-horror creatures to their owner's hands. So their spell number 1, Arclight Phoenix hits the bin. Consider going off. So it looks like Phoenix is coming into play also. So that Thing flips. Let's see if they have another 1-mana spell. They do. There's Opt. And Phoenix is coming. So we are getting smacked for 10 right here on like turn 4. Pretty tough. Fortunately though, yeah, so we're definitely milling ourselves, but all of our creatures have just a lot of enter the battlefield utility. Alright, so we're gonna play Undead Butler, see if we mill anything good. Alright, so up to 5 creatures in the bin. We have 2 more rats to play, thankfully. Alright, missed right there. Play another one. Mill again. Okay, so we're up to 6 creatures in the graveyard, and we have plenty of blockers. Like, we're feeling pretty safe that the opponent can't kill us right now, unless they somehow got a bunch more Phoenixes in the yard, but they're just firing off sleight of hands and stuff. Sleight of hand again. Okay, so we're gonna survive their turn at the very least. Now what I'm doing here is checking my graveyard and whether I can flip Cemetery Tampering. And we only need to block with 1 creature on the Wiccan Horror, but if we put 2 creatures in the graveyard, we're gonna be able to trigger Cemetery Trespassing on our upkeep. So that's what I'm checking right here. Like, okay, do we have a Lotleth in the graveyard? And so we're purposely blocking with 2 creatures, leaving a creature in play for the Blood for Bones in our hand. That's why we didn't triple block right there. We don't really care about killing Arclight Phoenix, like we will get to, but that's just bonus. So we're gonna free cast Lotleth Giant right here and ding them for 10. And we just have like a clean turn 5 kill right here with the free cast Lotleth Giant and then a Blood for Bones pulling up another one. So opponent probably didn't see themselves dying from the position that they're in right there. So this is just an awesome win. So we're just grabbing a random creature for the second card and ding them again for the win. On to the next game. A really great looking hand. Now, some of the sequencing I'm not quite certain of. So we have the option of Stitcher Supplier and Gnawing Vermin against a turn 1 Llanowar Elves. And I think it's actually better to lead with Vermin here, and you'll see why. So opponent plays a turn 3 Haster, and this turn 3 Reckless Stormseeker is actually not an uncommon opening. Like, I've seen that a few times. And we would have really loved chump blocking with our Gnawing Vermin to cut down their Llanowar Elves. It's just not as great to chump block with the Stitcher Supplier there, so it's hard to say, but I think against turn 1 Llanowar Elves, especially if it's like off a red-green shockland, it's better to lead with Gnawing Vermin to punish their mana dorks. But we're in major trouble here because their Llanowar Elves is allowing their Lovestruck Beast to attack, plus the haste enabling off the Stormseeker. So now we're finally going to get to attack, to deal with the Llanowar Elves. But we're on the back foot for sure. It's our turn 3, and normally like it's pretty safe to take it off and like slam Cemetery Tampering. I'm going to go for it here because the upside's so huge. And we don't get any really great hits. I mean, Gorging Vulture is probably the best, but it's not one of the ones we like to see. And I'm feeling okay, like, alright, if opponent doesn't have a 1-1, we're doing okay. But I forgot that they have Lair of the Hydra as an automatic 1-1 to enable the Love Struck Beast, so we're going to get smacked for 8 damage anyway. So opponent's just playing really clean, good magic, and they're drawing incredible also. So we're just in huge trouble here. Now, unfortunately, cannot double spell here, so decide just to do the more mana efficient play of playing Blackbloom Rogue. Would have felt better if we could have played Undead Butler plus another like small creature, but it's looking pretty grim for us with just one blocker. And yeah, there's the Colony Ambush, so they can just turn on the Hydra and then we're dead. So this deck will struggle against the hyper aggressive ones at times. We do have a lot of chump blockers though, so we have that going for us. But yeah, we're just going to Gnawing Vermin mill ourselves, get the train going. Now here, Tocasia's dig site is going to punish us because we can't play double 1-drop here because we don't have another black source. So I'm not sold on how useful it is. Like, it can surveil in the late game, but as you can see, a lot of these games, we have sort of a lot to do with our mana anyway. It's a small sample size though, so we'll have to see. So we're going to play the second Vermin, and we're going to play Blackbloom Rogue as the tap land. And it's pretty clear at this point we're playing against blue-white control. And we're sort of going to do the same thing we did against blue-black control, just keep hammering them with 1/1s. Alright, so opponent has Dovin's Veto. They're not going to mess with Cemetery Tampering. Alright, opponent passes with 4 mana up. And once again, like, just an army of expendable creatures is fairly effective against control because they have to be so precise with their resources. So we're going to fire off another Cemetery Tampering, and another Dovin's Veto takes care of it. But at least they can't fire off like Memory Deluge there. We're forcing them to type their mana, and they just missed a land drop here. So it's good because they're choked on mana. It's bad because their hand's all action. So here comes a Wandering Emperor. They're going to make a 2/2. And they're going to make like the best block they have right now, which is blocking Stitcher Supplier. It will juice up our graveyard, but they won't lose their Samurai. And it's pretty clear at this point, we're just going to play both the spells in our hands. So we're going to start with Vulture. That's going to mill us for 4, we'll maybe gain a little bit of life, which doesn't really matter in this matchup, but here's another Gnawing Vermin. So Lotleth Giant is currently lethal against them. If we can ever get one into play, that is the question. Now you might be able to hear it already, but sometimes on my recordings the audio just messes up at the end, so I'm just going to mute it here and we're just going to have commentary at this point. But opponent sends it with the Samurai. We're definitely chumping with the Vermin because they have Vigilance anyway, and we can kill it with the Death Trigger. The opponent missed another land drop, so I'm trying to decide how to attack here. So they have a Wandering Emperor, which we want to take care of, but we also want to deal damage to them. So I decide to send both rats at the Emperor and the Vulture at them. And opponent has a Shark Typhoon. Thankfully just a 2/2, but it is allowing them to try and draw out of this mana screw they're experiencing. Now thankfully Wandering Emperor still bites the dust here, and we're going to take down all their creatures. But decide to go ahead and use Faerie Dreamthief. We have a lot of cheap plays. We might be able to draw something we can cast. Unfortunately we don't, but we have a lot of must deal with threats in hand right now. Now opponent finds land number 5, slams to Faerie. Now they have been mana screwed this game, but we're going to use this to our advantage here. So they only have 2 lands open, so they're going to need like a Dovin's Veto or a Make Disappear. They don't have an Absorb to try and save them. So I'm going to see if I can like bait out removal right here, because we have a backup cheap creature in Stitcher Supplier. And decide once again to play around like just Jwari Disruption or something like that. So we're going to just see if they have it, and we're going to fire off Blood for Bones, because eventually we'll be able to hard cast Lotleth Giant. So we're waiting, they've already used a couple Dovin's Vetoes, and it looks like they got nothing. So we're waiting to see if this works, if there's like a Stifle And opponent just has removal spell, which only makes the trigger even stronger. So we lock up this win as well. Man, this deck is just super fun. I love being able to reanimate Lotleth Giant and just blindside people for tons of damage. Self-mill is just a favorite archetype of mine. I love playing it. A card that really surprised me though was Cemetery Tampering. I haven't really used it that much, but just being able to like dig further for our combo pieces and free cast them, and not only that, but like have a self-mill engine in this card. Anyway, it just did a lot of work, and so I'll be paying a lot more attention to this card. Now, as far as upgrade paths, I mean, anytime they make new self-mill creatures, you gotta just pay attention to them, see if they slot into the deck. One way to upgrade it is to use better utility lands, like the rare ones like Takanuma, Castle Locthwain, Hive of the Eye Tyrant. So that's one way to do like the non-budget version. Other things I was considering was like Silencer to like pitch things and possibly destroy stuff, Mausoleum Secrets to find the combo pieces. This is like an alternate 4-mana reanimation card, but if you're not splashing white, it's going to ding you for a lot of damage, which there are a lot of really aggro decks in Explorer, so I don't know if this works with like how much red-green and mono-red there is. Cruelty of Gix is another option, especially with Read Ahead, that it can just be 5-mana reanimation with a lot of other utility built in, so that's another way to possibly go. Or you can just run a snow mana base and do Blood on the Snow. It will require you, though, if you're going to reanimate Lotleth Giant, to have 7 snowlands in play, and that's sort of a big ask, but maybe there's like a controlling version that can pull this off. There's also Breach the Multiverse, which is sort of a 1-card combo, like if you can hit a Lotleth Giant, so I want to make this work somehow, but this is another one we might have to cheat into play. But anyway, those are just my thoughts on possible upgrade paths, but yeah, there's just so many dimensions you can take self-mill, and you better believe that there's more of them that I have cooking up. So anyway, let me know in the comments, what's your personal record for a Lotleth Giant kill? Anyway, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.